Welcome to the World Wire Update. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. In a nation divided by politics, the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous 9-0 decision in a major gun case. For once, all 9 justices, liberal and conservative, stood together, defying expectations of another split verdict on firearms. The case didn't hinge on the Second Amendment itself, but on a technical yet crucial point of federal law. This rare unity forced both gun rights and gun control advocates to reconsider their assumptions about the court's approach to firearms. The question now, what legal principle was so clear that it united the entire court? The case wasn't about individual gun rights. Mexico sued U.S. gun manufacturers, blaming them for cartel violence fueled by trafficked American firearms. Mexico argued the company's marketing and distribution practices enabled illegal gun flows, seeking billions in damages. The gunmakers countered that a 2005 federal law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, PLCAA, shielded them from such lawsuits. The Supreme Court agreed, ruling unanimously that PLCAA clearly barred Mexico's claims. The decision ended Mexico's legal challenge and reaffirmed the powerful legal shield protecting the firearms industry. For gunmakers, it was a decisive victory. For gun control advocates, a major setback. Supreme Court gun cases are usually bitterly divided, with justices split along ideological lines and strong opinions on both sides. Past rulings were decided by narrow margins, with fierce dissents and passionate arguments. Many expected the court's liberal justices to side with Mexico, or at least seek a narrow reading of PLCAA, given the stakes. Instead, all 9 justices agreed. The law's text was clear, and Mexico's lawsuit simply couldn't proceed. The ruling was a reminder that, sometimes statutory interpretation, not ideology, drives the court's most important decisions. The surprise lay in the justices' shared commitment to enforcing Congress's words exactly as written, above all else. The justices' unity in this case stemmed from the clear and direct language of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, or PLCAA. Despite the often contentious nature of Supreme Court decisions, this particular case stood out for the rare consensus it produced among the justices. Passed by Congress in 2005, PLCAA was designed to broadly shield gun manufacturers and dealers from being held liable when their firearms are used unlawfully by others. The law was a response to a wave of lawsuits in the early 2000s that sought to hold the gun industry responsible for crimes committed with their products. In this case, the court found that Mexico's claims against U.S. gunmakers fit squarely within the category of lawsuits that Congress intended to block with PLCAA. The justices emphasized that the law's purpose was to prevent courts from imposing liability on gun companies for the criminal acts of third parties. While PLCAA does contain certain exceptions, such as cases involving defective products or violations of law, the court determined that Mexico's arguments did not meet the high threshold required to bypass the law's broad protections. The justices carefully examined the statutory language and concluded that none of the exceptions applied in this instance. Importantly, the decision was not about the Second Amendment or the broader debate over gun policy in America. Instead, it was a straightforward application of a federal statute, focusing solely on the text and intent of the law as written by Congress. This case demonstrates that when the language of a law is unambiguous and its intent is clear, even a deeply divided Supreme Court can find common ground. The justices were able to set aside their personal beliefs and political differences to reach a unanimous decision. By enforcing the law exactly as it was written, the court reaffirmed the principle that judges must interpret statutes based on their plain meaning, not on personal views or policy preferences. The ruling cements legal protections for gunmakers, shielding them from lawsuits over criminal misuse of their products. This decision is seen as a significant victory for the firearms industry, which has long argued that they should not be held responsible for the actions of individuals who misuse their products. By preventing these lawsuits, the ruling aims to protect the industry from potentially crippling legal battles that could arise from every criminal act involving a firearm. For gun owners, it's seen as a defense of the Second Amendment by preventing indirect attacks through litigation. Many advocates believe that this ruling reinforces their constitutional right to bear arms, ensuring that legal challenges cannot be used as a backdoor method to impose gun control. This sense of security is particularly important to those who view the Second Amendment as a fundamental part of American freedom and identity. But the decision doesn't affect who can own a gun or ongoing battles over restrictions for marijuana users and young adults. These issues remain contentious and are subject to ongoing legal and political debates. For For instance, the question of whether individuals who use marijuana, even in states where it is legal, should be allowed to own firearms continues to be a hot topic. Federal law still bars gun ownership for anyone using illegal drugs, including marijuana, even if legal under state law. This creates a complex legal landscape where state and federal laws are at odds, leading to confusion and potential legal risks for gun owners who use marijuana. Law enforcement agencies continue to enforce these federal restrictions, which can result in the confiscation of firearms and legal penalties for those found in violation. Age restrictions on gun purchases remain hotly contested, with cases heading to the Supreme Court. These legal battles are crucial as they will determine the future landscape of gun ownership for young adults. Advocates on both sides are preparing for a prolonged fight, with significant implications for how age-related restrictions are applied and enforced across the country. The Smith & Wesson decision signals the court's willingness to enforce federal gun laws as written, which could shape future rulings. This decision may set a precedent for how the court approaches other gun-related cases, potentially influencing the interpretation and application of existing laws. Legal experts are closely watching to see how this ruling will impact future decisions and the broader legal landscape. Ultimately, Congress, not the courts, holds the power to change these laws. While the judiciary interprets and enforces the law, it is up to the legislative branch to enact new regulations or amend existing ones. This underscores the importance of political engagement and advocacy, as changes to gun laws will ultimately come from elected representatives responding to the will of the people. The Supreme Court's recent unanimous Smith & Wesson ruling stands out as a rare moment of agreement in a landscape otherwise marked by deep divisions. While that decision surprised many observers, it's important to recognize that most gun-related cases reaching the court are anything but unanimous. In fact, gun rights and regulations are among the most polarizing issues the justices face, often sparking passionate debate both inside and outside the courtroom. The country itself is sharply divided, with advocates on both sides rallying for their vision of the Second Amendment. This term, the court is set to decide whether federal law can prohibit marijuana users from owning firearms, a question that pits federal restrictions against the growing number of states legalizing cannabis. Even in states where cannabis is legal for medical or recreational use, federal law still classifies it as a controlled substance, creating a legal gray area for gun owners who use marijuana. Another high-profile case challenges state laws that designate broad, sensitive places, such as parks, schools, and government buildings, as off-limits for firearms. The outcome could redefine where Americans are allowed to carry guns in public, testing the boundaries of the court's recent expansion of public carry rights. Age-based restrictions are also under review, with several cases questioning whether laws that bar 18 to 20-year-olds from purchasing handguns are constitutional. Challengers argue that young adults, who can vote and serve in the military, should not be denied the right to buy firearms for self-defense or sport. Unlike the recent Mexico case, these disputes go to the heart of constitutional interpretation, forcing the justices to weigh history, precedent, and evolving social norms. The justices are expected to be sharply divided, with opinions likely to fall along ideological lines, reflecting the broader national debate. The decisions the court hands down will have far-reaching consequences, shaping not only who can own guns, but also how Americans store, carry, and use them in daily life. New rulings could redraw the map of legal carry zones, affecting millions of gun owners and law enforcement agencies across the country. States may be forced to revisit their own regulations, balancing public safety with constitutional rights in an era of heightened scrutiny and activism. As these contentious cases move forward, one thing is clear: the era of unanimous decisions on gun law is likely over, and the nation's highest court will continue to play a pivotal role in defining the future of gun rights in America. The Supreme Court's 9-0 ruling was a rare moment of clarity in the gun debate, but it won't last. The decision reaffirmed Congress's power to shield gun makers, but left the thorniest constitutional questions unresolved. Upcoming cases on marijuana, age limits, and sensitive places will force the court back into contentious territory. For Americans, the legal landscape remains complex. One clear answer on gunmaker liability, but many questions still open. The future of gun rights and regulation will be shaped by the court's next likely divided decisions. One thing is certain: the national debate over guns is far from settled.